Oh, how are you, Paul? Good. Very well. How are you today? All right, thank you. It was the Shavers Creek Maple Harvest Festival. So I worked and had a blast. So good. Yeah, yeah. So fun. Just being outside with so many great people. Yeah. Oh, I have maple syrup every day, actually. It's part of my daily routine. In my coffee, in my matcha, in my yogurt. Yeah. So just, I feel like it must be one of the healthiest sugars, right? It's so natural. Like there's not much production, no chemicals, no, yeah. So that and honey kind of, yeah. I do like honey as well. Yeah. But if I can have maple, then that's my choice. So, yes. Thanks for asking. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for being here today on this Monday afternoon. The image that you see up on the screen right now is it is Central Asia's Tibetan Plateau, aptly justified, called the roof of the world. Its average elevation is more than 14,700 feet. It's the world's highest and largest plateau, covering the area about 4 times the size of Texas. And this is part of the website. It's called Earth as Art. And so these are satellite images, and you can find satellite images from all over the world that have been turned into views like this that we can take in and appreciate. This one particularly, all of the tectonic forces that have shaped that plateau over the course of time, crumpled and uplifted mountain ridges, all the lakes that have formed there, the glacial lakes. And so there's this interplay of visible and invisible light across the electromagnetic spectrum. And so using Earth as art, it's from the Earth Resources Observation and Science Center, part of the US Geologic Survey. So I think that looking at Earth in these different ways can really enhance our view, right? Seeing with new eyes. So as our centering for today, with your feet flat on the floor and paying attention to your breath, taking it in and out, letting that flow like the waves. I'll share this piece with you that Autumn shared with me. Mother Earth is alive, our most intimate relation. As unfortunate as it might be, we can, if we must, live without fathers and mothers and brothers and sisters, without ancestors, spouses, friends, and acquaintances. However, a person depends every moment of every day upon Mother Earth. We breathe her air into our lungs, we drink her waters, we eat her nutrients. Our cells are dying and constantly being replaced. The flow between nature and ourself is always in process. We degenerate and regenerate with nature's, we need it, not just nature's help, but the idea that we are alive because of it. And so when we are considering Earth as art, the depths of what it can offer, what it does offer us every day. So keeping that in mind as we continue these hypotheses of the breakdown, right? Why is this breakdown happening? What is the root cause of this breakdown? As we go through this part of the course, I find that people are asking for options, for ideas of where you can be engaged, how you might make choices. And so on the opening page there of our Canvas, you'll find that little, what's circled up there, resources. So if you open it up, there are places in there, a disclaimer, I have no investment in any of the companies that are listed there, the podcasts that are listed there, the websites, all of the different options. I have no investment in them except that I think that they're doing cool things for the planet and for connecting people. So those you can review and check out and see if there's anything there. It also has a list of Penn State clubs that you can get involved in that are related to topics that we address in class. And if you find more, please tell me about them, and I will make sure that we add them to the resources page. So check it out. Yeah, we're going to be moving into the action portion of the class very soon, and you might find some interesting ways there to be engaged. So as we talk about these challenging situations, it's nice to know where to go with these, the understanding of our own connection to Earth, and then also what we can do to move in the world. So we have these symptoms that we've talked about, right? The oceans and the climate and the chemicals and all of that. Pandemics is also in there because that we've all experienced, obviously. And so the pandemic was a time that people encroached upon nature, and those diseases were shared from one species to another, and that's where COVID came from. So understanding that a pandemic is a part of that disconnect, a part of or one of those symptoms that we are experiencing. So today we're going to be addressing another way that we can look at, another hypothesis around these root causes. So what we're seeing, all those things up there, the symptoms, and then what we're trying to figure out is the root causes. So today, you do not control the thoughts, or excuse me, you do control the thoughts and actions that follow an emotion, and you have a great deal of say in how you react to the emotion as long as you are aware of it. So understanding that this requires a need for knowing the self, for knowing what's inside, what's underlying, being able to ask yourself, why did I just react that way? What is the emotion around that? And then why did I choose to react in the way that I did? So in this case, I am going back to what some of you mentioned before as root causes. Some of you mentioned things like greed, right, as a root cause. Might also be things like ignorance, right? Just not knowing about connection. It could be just disconnect. It could be a lot of different things that are laying under, but that are things that are essentially inside of us. So that whole idea of how you are aware of what's going on inside you. So who are you? We are now starting week 10, so you've had 9 weeks of reflection, of digging into who you are and asking yourself some questions. And so what is it that you've discovered, right? What is your relationship with yourself? What is your relationship with your emotions? How connected are you to your inner world? Because this is related to my hypothesis that I'm going to propose today, which is this. Could it be that these symptoms that we're seeing are related to our inner world? Could it be that this world of wounds is a reflection of our own inner world? This can be a very challenging, it's a challenging thing to teach. It's a challenging thing to hold inside of ourselves, a challenging question. So could it be that the things on this planet are happening because of a disconnect inside of humans, inside of me or you? So that greed, that numbness, the addictions that we have to all kinds of different things, the uncontrolled growth on the planet, right? So understanding that how I show up, right? If I show up and I'm feeling really down, I've noticed that the people around me kind of like, we all kind of take on the same vibe, like, ooh, kind of mushy, right? But if I show up and I'm super peppy, I was experimenting with this at the Maple Harvest Festival. We had this parking situation where people had to like drive farther. Some people were surprised by it. They had to ride a bus to get to the Shavers Creek. And some people were obviously not pleased about it. But if I showed up and I hopped on the bus and I was like, yes, you're here. Welcome to Maple Harvest Festival. Our moods are, they can be somewhat, transmittable. We share our energies. We tune into other people's energies, whether we realize it or not, in some cases, which is fascinating. So how is it that the reflection of how I see myself, how I feel about myself, how does that show up in my relationship with the world around me, whether it's people or whether it's the environment, whatever, or just everything, I suppose. If I'm showing up full of love, then how does that shape the world around me? So today's class is a reflection about us. So could it be that this world of wounds is a reflection of our own inner world? So when you show up, when you wake up in the morning and you take that mirror moment, what do you see when you look in the mirror? What do you think when you look in the mirror? What do you feel when you look in the mirror? What do you hear when you look in the mirror? That would be your self-talk. So take just a quiet moment and think about that. Another example might be time alone. If I have time to be by myself, how do I celebrate that for me? What is it that how can I tune into what I need and honor that, right? Saturday morning, yes, I got this space and time to myself. How cool is that? I get to have a date with me, right? Is that how you feel about that time? So this self-talk, when we start to separate or when we tune into our self-talk, right? What is it that you hear? There's about 50 words per minute. Research, I have no idea how they know that, right? But research says that we have this constant self-talk going on, 3,000 words per hour. Pretty remarkable. The things that are going on in your minds right now, what you're thinking about me, what you're thinking about the class, what you're thinking about what's happening next, so there's all of these thoughts that are running through our minds. And so part of being fully present here is trying to still some of that talk for a little bit. But I think that it happens quite a lot. So when you're looking at taking that moment to look at yourself in the mirror, is that like a comfy couch? Like the setting is just welcoming and kindness and hospitality? Or is it more like a courtroom where there's some kind of battle being played in your mind? What's the tone of your self-talk? Maybe it's this. Maybe it's a trance of unworthiness, right? Not good enough, not smart enough. So consider you. Is there a general mood of unlove? A deep-seated suspicion most of us harbor that we cannot be loved or that we are not truly lovable just for who we are. If this is what we see and feel about ourselves, then it's no wonder that the world around us is sort of chaotic. Not sort of, is chaotic in a lot of cases. So, how is it that you judge yourself? How do you judge yourself? on your journal there for today's page, not blank enough might be a phrase that you might use to enter into this question. So for an example, I have this view that I am not fun enough. I am not fun enough. And that story comes from a lot of different places in my life. I mean, I've been told, like, you're kind of not very fun. Like, you just want to sit here and talk and have conversation, and like, that's not particularly fun. Or you don't want to go out, like, that's not fun. Or, you don't want to do these things that we want to do, so you're not really all that fun. So that story can play in my head, the way that I was raised, the amount I was taught to be very responsible. And so, how does this story affect how I move through my world? Well, it's shown up like this. For my kids, I've bought a ton of games and toys because I want them to have fun. I want them to play. If I'm not fun enough, then they better have stuff, right, that they can play with. And those things now just sit around my house being unused for most part. Um, so what is that, right? How does that story affect how I move through the world? It's something that I've been working on and has been really actually pretty fun. So how is it that how do you judge yourself? Take a moment and think about it. And then I know that this is pretty vulnerable, but if you are able, talk to your neighbor about that. How do you judge yourself? Is there anyone who would like to say something about this? Thank you.
I was really struggling when trying to think of something for not enough. I've noticed a lot of people tell me I'm a bit too much sometimes, or I'm too loud, or I'm too angry, I'm too emotional, I'm too this. I feel like I get a lot more of like I'm too much more than
Oh,
like I'm not enough, which I think is a good thing. I think it's good to be too much, but it definitely could be a lot sometimes.
I agree. Thank you. Thanks for saying so. I appreciate the new phrasing. Thank you. Up behind you, Christine, there's somebody up there.
I try to look at this. I try to. Yeah. No, my bad.
All good.
Sure, my bad. I
Perfect.
try to look at this in a positive way, and I said, I'm never not enough. That's what I said.
Cool. Anyone else?
Well, I guess this isn't really answering the question, but like I say to myself a lot, like, why am I thinking this about myself when nobody has ever said this about me? So, like, I'm just like, people don't think this about other people. Like, I don't think this about another person. So, why would somebody think this about me, you know?
Oh, that's beautiful. So we make up stories, right? For some reason, whatever that satisfies. So when we're considering this not enoughness or the too muchness, yeah, let's take in that video if you would, Scout. Where do those things come from, right? Where do those stories about ourselves come from? Because we're certainly not born with them.
When you ever take one, Mark?
So we've got one question that we want to ask you today.
Okay, well, what's that question?
The question is, if you could change one thing about your body, what would it be?
Only one. I would change my forehead. I have a really big forehead. Because I speak tall.
The puffiness of my face.
My ears, have big ears.
Stretch marks after having a baby.
A lot of times, like, kids would make fun of me, like, hey man, you get big ears, you got Dumbo over there, you know?
Definitely skin, because I've dealt with acne and eczema issues ever since I was a little kid. 我小时候，因为大家比较喜欢大眼睛的那种美女，所以我就也希望自己眼睛能大一些。Growing up, like a lot of people call me like five head or like your parents so big, they always like would say something to me about it. Yo diría porque muchos dos caminan derecho y como que mi pie está un poco chueco. When I was younger, I felt like I wasn't quite adequate enough.
Can you sit on the chair? All right, I want to ask you one question.
What's the question?
If you could change one thing about your body, what would you change?
Um, hmm. You know, have a mermaid tail. Probably like a shark mouth. So I could eat a lot of stuff. Like an teleportation on my bottom. Extra clean ears. I want legs that could cheetah so I can run faster than the cheetah. I could have wings that I fly. I don't think there's anything to change. I like my body actually.
Yeah, you wouldn't change anything?
Nothing else. That's amazing. A lot of people obsess about getting older and about the wrinkles. I love my white hair. I loved it when it started turning white. It's one of those things Because I chose to stay this way because it just wouldn't be me if I totally changed the way I look.
Hey guys, thank you so much.
So using just the example of how we judge ourselves for how we look, right? It's not this judgment that we carry about ourselves. We aren't born with them. They come along in time, and then we get to choose what happens with them, right? We get to choose what happens with them. What I've decided, what I've chosen, is that the people that don't think I'm fun enough might not be the people that I want to spend time with, right? If I have to change myself to fit their mold of what's fun, then that might not be the place for me. So how is it that we can choose these judgments that we make of ourselves? Some of the challenge is that we have gone through this system of culture, and some of the system of our culture is very old. So thinking back to the 1600s, actually, back to Descartes. Descartes was the one who came up with this idea. That's why it's called the Cartesian split. The idea, he was the guy that said, I think, therefore I am, right? So take that in for a minute. I'm sure you've heard it. Now really ponder it for a moment. Think about it. I think, therefore I am, puts all of the weight in our value on how we are thinking, right? It's not putting a lot of, in fact, it puts no value in how am I feeling? How am I being? So there's been this split, and this is how our education system is set up, right? The idea that the mind, body, spirit, you go and you sit in a chair in school and you learn stuff, and that's making you a better person because you are getting to think and therefore you are. So it's a very Western society kind of idea that we need to separate these, right? You are sitting in your chair to learn, and then you go outside for gym class to move your body, and you might get 15 or 20 minutes to do that, and then you go back to your chair so that you can continue to think and therefore be. And so we aren't really setting ourselves up for success when we parse ourselves out this way, create this division in ourselves. This connection then of that break inside of us, inside of our own beings, between mind and body and spirit, then has directly affected our relationships with other people, but then also our relationships with the natural world. So there is less of those direct connections. So we need to consider this Cartesian split, as we are wrestling with this idea of how we show up changes the world around us. So it also creates this sense of false belonging. So at my wise old age, it's much easier for me to say, you don't think I'm fun enough? That's okay. We don't have to hang out, right? I don't have to be falsely belonging to you. But it's taken me decades to get really comfortable with that. So how is it that you are facing this? How is this kind of mental game happening for you? I call it a game. That isn't meaning to demean or lessen your experience, but it's this wrestling that's happening. So when we have this false belonging, if we learn that we have to fit in with people, and then we shrink down and make ourselves smaller so that we can fit, we're really missing out on a lot of cool connections when we separate from ourselves to suit other people. So how does this show up, right? Maybe you're not so comfortable being alone, doing things by yourself, taking yourself to a movie, taking yourself out to dinner. maybe that's something that's a challenge for you. Maybe we spend a lot of time being busy so that we don't have to take time to listen to what's going on in our own minds, right? Maybe we agree to do things and go places with people that we don't really want to because we think that we should do that in order to fit in. So we separate, what is this separation from ourselves that's affecting how we show up as, fully ourselves? And so thinking we're building now on that first person ecology from last week. What is your role, my role in the world? How do we affect the world by our choices, the things that we purchase, the way that we move? So that's a big part of this. Separation from ourselves affects. There's also this idea that we are setting up our culture in a lot of ways to be separate from each other. So I know this is not a typical home. This is not like any home I think I'll ever live in. But for those who do have this experience, I think it's just an important way. I'm just saying that because I live in central Pennsylvania. This doesn't look like central Pennsylvania to me. There's no judgment around this image, right? But looking at how these people can drive up and drive in their garage and go right into their house and they have the fences built up around their home. And so the interaction with the outside world outside of this home is probably minimal, I'm guessing. And so how is it that we've chosen or have set things up where we live in a private house with our private transportation, spending 90% plus indoors? And now there's this trusted friend, right? There's 12% at least of our population that say they have no trusted friend. And that number has been rising consistently. We are radically social animals. Connecting with other people is in our nature, very deeply so. And so to live in the ways that we've set up like this is not setting us up for community, which is what we're made for. So these choices, right? So remember back to probably class number 2, and I asked you to do the sidewalk experiment. You're approaching another person on the sidewalk. It's just the two of you. What are you going to do? How does that shape our culture, the choices that we make in connection? There are also this book Sherry Turkle wrote called Alone Together: Why We Expect More from Technology and Less from Each Other. So instead of visiting, we might phone people, or instead of phoning, we text, or instead of texting, we post updates for our friends, and then all of the others that might see it, right? Whatever platform. And so technology is one of those things that we keep reaching for it, expecting connection, expecting it to meet our needs, when in reality, it can't, because we're radically social animals. We are made to live in real deep community. And this is happening at younger and younger ages as well. Irresistible by Adam Alter, The Rise of Addictive Technology and the Business of Keeping Us Hooked. It is a business. They make the apps so that you continue to use them, right? It's definitely part of the marketing scheme. There are people that do it differently, right? Technology is an incredible tool. We're going to have a whole class period on technology later in the semester because it's such an incredible, powerful opportunity. And then it's also such a challenge. It doesn't create that real community. So you might remember back to the climate change class when I said that people have known about climate change since the 1960s, or even some people say the 1930s. And yet we're still approaching this climate crisis, this thing that is so hard to manage and tackle because it's become so big as we go increase the decades, right? The 1930s, that's almost 100 years ago. And so we know, research shows that technology is separating us. So what happens if we take that information and do something with it sooner than later? There could be real opportunity in that, so it doesn't get worse over the coming decades. Separate from each other, at this moment in history, humans are a dangerously insane and very sick species, says Eckhart Tolle. As a testament to our insanity, humans killed over 100 million fellow humans in the past century alone. No other species violates itself on such a grand scale. Only a people who are in a deeply alienated state would create such a reality. Killing is pretty dramatic. And yet it's happening every day on our planet. So how can we see this separation? So my hypothesis that I propose to you today is that this separation from ourselves leads us to be separate from each other and separate from Earth. That world of wounds is a reflection of our inner separation. So if we're keeping our true self hidden, or thinking that we're not good enough or smart enough, or that we're showing up as too much, too emotional, then we calm ourselves, we hide our lights under buckets, right? So can you imagine a world without this separation, where there's no sexism, no shooting, no separation, no racism, no speciesism, no greed? Right? What that would look like if we were connected in those ways? So take a moment and talk about this hypothesis. See how you feel about it. It is just a hypothesis. Are you Ian? No. Okay. Just trying to figure out who Ian was. What's your name?
Area.
Hi, Darian. It's nice to meet you. Is there anybody who would like to speak to this? Agreeing with, disagreeing with, wrestling with, questioning this hypothesis?
I think it's definitely a hard world to create because as a species, humanity is always driven by competition, striving to be better than one another, striving to do better in this world. But, you know, these types of, or this mindset creates multiple illusions that lead to racism, sexism, and other types of prejudice. So it can be dangerous, but it's also a necessary part of our species in order for us to evolve and change.
What do folks think about that? Competition is necessary. I think that's interesting to ponder. Let's open a little conversation. Thank you for posing that. It's very interesting.
I agree to a certain extent. Competition for the purpose of a main goal is a necessary thing. Like 20 years in the military, if everybody just was out for themselves, out for their own benefit, nothing would ever get done. So I think it's a balance between both, and it just depends on the community that you're in. Some communities are more isolated than others, so separation is okay, but in other communities, team atmospheres, separation isn't really an option.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So less competition and more collaboration in some communities. Yeah. Anybody else have anything to say about the competition or about the hypothesis?
I feel like now with our generation, separation has grown so much. We're the most connected generation because of social media, but we're the most alone generation because of everybody is connected on social media. There's no human person interaction anymore. And that goes with the competition because back during tribal times, you're in competition with, yes, maybe 30 other men, maybe 20 other women. But now it's like you're in competition with millions and millions of other people, and you're looking at social media every day and you're trying to figure out how am I going to compare to somebody that's been doing something or that was given something that you weren't given in your life. So I think separation is increased a lot in our generation.
Thank you for saying so. Comparison is the thief of joy is one of my favorite quotes for you to think about. Yeah.
Okay, so I feel like a small thing that might help honestly with the separation, if we went back to like just having like solid desktops that you can't move around, because back when they had desktops, right, you would only be on the internet for like a little bit of time, because no one's sitting there for that long at like for a long period of time. Now you have a phone, you can carry it anywhere, and you're more likely to just pull it out whenever you just like whenever you have like a little bit of time, you're gonna pull it out, you're gonna look, scroll. But back when we had desktops, right, you had to go to a specific area in your house or at your work, and you had to go on that device, right, with that slow Wi-Fi, and it built your patience a little bit too. So I feel like that would have helped. That would probably help if we like instead of having like how reels go infinitely, we need something similar to back when we had desktops as our primary like devices.
Yeah. So for you, iLanguage, I believe that it would help you, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. That's interesting. So there's lots to consider in this. Humans are nature and must be in relationship with nature, and by extension, that means other human beings. And so building that relationship with ourselves helps us to connect, right? So where does radical self-love, how does that phrase hit you, right? Radical self-love. What does that mean if I am loving myself so much that it builds my connection with other people and other places and other beings on this planet, right? Radical self-love. And yet in this place where we can and are, quote, in competition with millions of other people, that's really challenging. Comparison is the thief of joy. And so looking back, you remember this, we've looked at this a couple of times. We are each unique. So how is it that we can move through the world and consider all of this equipment and our uniqueness as we face these challenges, right? Considering climate change and ecological disasters. So how can we bring this full circle? If I have radical self-love, how am I going to show up in the world about these things? Well, part of it is that I'm going to be able to feel my emotions. These are the emotions that have been reported by other students in BISI, as well as students around the world: despair, grief, overwhelm, fear, anger, uncertainty, guilt, frustration, apathy, boredom, sadness, hopelessness, hopeful, resentful, uneasy, sluggish, animated, meaning wanting to make change and move through the world. So these emotions you might be experiencing, there are people I mentioned in the climate change class, is vocabulary around climate change that have not been there before, right? That eco and climate anxiety. And there are also researchers, these are just two of those, that are working toward or working with climate emotions. And also, I want you to know that you're not alone. When polled, I understand the text is very small. These are all of the states. And then these are the percentages, right? These are the people, this little peach column right here is the people that are not worried about climate change. And then we have people that are kind of worried, a little bit worried. And then we have people that are more worried. And then we have people that are extraordinarily worried about what's happening on our planet today. So 15,700 youth between the ages of 16 and 25 were polled for this survey. So you can see that you're not alone. Like this big chunk are people that you could talk to and relate to about your fears or your worries or whatever it is that's the opportunities that are coming up about climate change. So I can't tell you specifically what to do. That comes back every year on my reports from students about the class is she didn't tell us what to do. So I can't tell you all to go out and love sea turtles and then make change that way, because some of you just simply, that's not where you connect. But the things overall that we can do, you experience these emotions, now what? You can focus on the things that you love, right? And that's different for every person in this room. Or maybe you find somebody else that's really in love with sea turtles, and then you get together and you make a club of people interested in sea turtles, and then you go out and make change, right? Focus on things that you love. Find folks to talk to about your feelings and normalizing and validating these feelings and this fear. And then acting alone and together toward the world that you want to see. And then also, of course, my big favorite is connecting with nature and the more than human world when you have a chance to do so and feel safe to do so. And remembering it's not okay to be perfect. If I forget my water bottle at home, sacrificing and choosing to buy a plastic water bottle because I'm thirsty and it's impacting my health has to be a choice that I would make. But it's a hard choice. So how can I have to understand I'm not perfect. I'm not going to make the right choice every time. But there is power in being aware. In your labs this week, you will see this, you might see this kind of activity, or it was in last week's lab, pardon me. What brings you joy? What are you good at? What is the work that needs doing? And then where do those things overlap in the what you should do, right? You're gonna contribute in different ways. Everybody is going to contribute in different ways, but understanding that we are all together in this, that we are creating separation with our apps and with our disconnect and with our cell phones that we walk around with all the time. And how can we make changes in that way? There are these people of Guatemala where they celebrate and live in a place where they experience, they don't see separation like we do. If a child is sick, then it's considered that the family is sick. If several people in the village are sick, then the village is sick. This same collective consciousness extends to the land. If there's something bad happening in their forest, then it means that everybody is going to be part of that everybody is being affected. So understanding that we are one whole being and that we are connected, right? There's not a Cartesian split. It's really that I live, therefore I am. I choose, therefore I am. And so how is it that we can move through that way, honoring who we really are? So this week's discussion post will come open right after class. Your prompt is, it takes courage to grow up and become who you really are. Thank you very much. I hope that you have a beautiful day.